Hello, my fellow chefs. Today we talk mussels, practice, and professionalism in the kitchen. I am Mark Grigsby, your chef and guide through this experience, and this is the incredible Discourse. Hello and welcome. I am Mark Grigsby, and you have found me here at the Incredible Discourse. Today we start with the bivalve mussels. They're a very versatile ingredient and can be prepared with garlic butter or tomato sauce or cream, or they can even be steamed or thrown into a soup. There are literally countless amount of different ways that you can make them, but this one is my favorite. This dish that I'm going to share with you today is a Mediterranean mussel pot with salsa verde coconut cream broth. It's light and bright and very flavorful. But before we get in it, let's talk about today's ingredient. There are thousands of species of mussels, believe it or not, but only 17 of them are edible, including the saltwater varieties. Most common are blue mussels, Mediterranean mussels, Pacific blue mussels, and New Zealand green lip mussels. These mollusks are available farmed or wild, but nearly 90% of the world's mussel supply is now cultivated. Wild mussels live along intertidal zones, clinging to rocks or bottom surfaces with their byssal threads. Cultivated mussels also cling to surfaces, but growers strategically attach them to different off-bottom gear. Today's dish of the day will feature medium to large-size Mediterranean mussels with white wine, garlic, coconut milk, and salsa verde. It's an interesting take on mussels and is extremely tasty. The broth is rich and buttery and can be soaked up with a piece of crusty bread. The mussels provide a briny saltiness to the broth, while the salsa verde gives a really nice pop of flavor, freshness, and heat. Another thing I like about this recipe is that it doesn't actually take a long time to make it once you've cleaned the mussels and knocked down the prep. We're going to build a little bit off of last week's episode and use some light chicken stock here. But this recipe can be kind of versatile in terms of the stock you choose to use. You don't have to be married to this chicken stock. You can use clam stock or dark chicken stock, or if you have a lot of mussels that you need to get rid of, you can make a mussel stock as well. Be creative and explore. I have a batch of light chicken stock here in the freeze to use, so that's what I'm going with. I also like chicken stock here because I want the broth at the end to have some depth and thickness. Because clam or mussel stock lacks collagen, the stock wouldn't come out as rich or thick, and that's okay too. It's an each to his own type deal here. We will also be talking about how to make the salsa verde from scratch. Here in Miami and South Florida, tomatillos are available year-round and can be found in grocery stores and farmer markets everywhere. Tomatillos are a tasty fruit that is very prevalent in Mexican cooking. It has a combination of flavors, tart, citrusy, tangy, and it's at the heart of this salsa verde recipe. These fruits, also called jam berries, look like small, underripe tomatoes, but they come in a husk and it has to be removed before you can use them. Roasting them brings out the flavor and the sweetness. I also roast the other vegetables included in this recipe to bring out their natural flavors. For those of you who don't know, salsa verde translates to green sauce, but you Google translated that shit already, didn't you? This sauce uses jalapenos for heat and onion and garlic for flavor. We will be making this recipe first so it's ready to use when we start our mussel pot. You can make this shit a couple of days in advance if you need to. It refrigerates well, but it only keeps its color and potency for a couple of days, so we want to make sure we plan appropriately so you get the best result when you're making these mussels. And by the way, this salsa verde recipe isn't just for mussels. You can use it for almost anything. You can adjust the amount of jalapeno in it if you like it to be more spicy, or you can take the jalapeno out completely if you don't. Although I do think that it would be a disservice to salsa verdes and their existence to take out the jalapeno. I remember using this same recipe on a hanger steak dish in my restaurants a long time ago with achote rice and some fire-roasted vegetables. It was a great summer dish. Maybe that'll be our recipe of the day one day. Who knows? I have many. We'll get there. The point is, this sauce is versatile and can be used for many different applications. Again, I'm giving you the insight, the keys, if you will. Now go drive that shit and be creative. Hone that palate, grasshopper. All right. Calm down. Formalities out of the way. Let's get in it. So this recipe doesn't call for a lot of equipment, just a few basic and easy items. First, I'm going to need a 6-quart pot with a lid. If you don't have a 6-quart, use one that will hold all of the mussels plus the broth. I'm also going to need a colander and a scrub brush to clean these mussels. A scouring pad will also do if you're short in the brush department. We'll need a large mixing bowl that will also hold all of the mussels, and I will be using this in a couple of the segments during this recipe. Lastly, I'm going to need a slotted spoon and a sheet pan that is lined with aluminum foil. All of these pieces can be picked up at a Walmart or a Target and should be common pieces of equipment in your professional kitchen. If you're feeling lazy, Amazon has all of this shit too. Let's talk ingredients you will need to make this mussel pot recipe. I'm going to split it into two parts, one for the salsa verde and one for the actual mussel pot after. So, let's start with the salsa verde. You're going to need 5 to 6 tomatillos, husked, rinsed, and quartered. A jalapeno with the stem taken off and cut in half. Now, you can take the seeds out of it if you wish to reduce the heat, or you can leave them in to get a good kick. It's important to note here that we don't want to cut the jalapenos into smaller pieces. We want to try to keep everything in as large of a piece as possible because we're going to roast them under high heat. The smaller the pieces, the faster they cook, and the faster they cook, the faster they shrink and char, and then you get an inconsistent product at the end. Anyhow, continuing on. 1 bunch of cilantro, half of a yellow onion that has been peeled and cut into 4, 3 to 5 garlic cloves peeled, and the juice of 1 lime that has been strained from its pulp. Now, we need a few things from the spice cabinet. About a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of salt, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. You're also going to need about 3 teaspoons of olive oil, and you can use any oil as this is going to be for roasting. I like olive oil in this recipe. The boldness and sharpness lend well to the rest of the flavors going on here. The salsa verde recipe should yield about 2 cups, maybe slightly under, but is enough for the mussel pot and can be modified or altered to your particular taste. Now, the ingredients for the mussel pot. We're going to start with the obvious here, right? You're going to need 2 pounds of mussels. And as I said earlier, you can use any of the mussels for this recipe. Green-lipped worked really well for this one and gives you a nice presentation piece that kind of glows in the bright green broth that we're going to make. But today, I am going to use Mediterranean mussels. I like them to be medium and large size, and I'm going to detail you in a little bit on how to clean and debeard them. We're going to also need about 1.5 cups of coconut milk and an equal part of salsa verde, 1 cup of light chicken stock or whatever stock you like. And then we're going to need about 2 cups of white wine. Here, you can use whichever you prefer. If you're a wine connoisseur and can pick out specific flavors in your wine even through the food, you want to select something that will complement these delicate seafood flavors. You don't want anything that's going to overpower the coconut milk or offset the salsa verde. The wine is mainly for steam, and when combined with the mussel brine they release, it adds that complexity and depth to your broth. I would recommend using a Pinot Grigio or a Chablis or even a fruitier Sauvignon Blanc. They will complement what your end game is here. And if you don't drink a lot of wine, you should. The shit's good for you and it makes people happy. Also, whiskey, bourbon, straight. Anyhow, I'm going left field. Too many likes. Let's continue on here. We're going to need a shallot minced and 2 or 3 garlic cloves microplaned. I like the microplane because I think it kind of brings out the strong flavors in the garlic so you don't have to use as much or have a bunch of little pieces of garlic shit floating in your pretty broth. You're going to need about 1/4 cup of cilantro chopped and 2 tablespoons of butter. And keep this butter cold. Don't leave it out on the counter while you're doing shit. I'll explain why in the next section. Lastly, to make this shit very pretty, you're going to need some nicely cut fresh lime wedges for garnish and some fresh picked cilantro leaves. Notice how Chef hooked you up today and gave you all of the measurements on air today? You're fucking welcome. But so you don't have to go back and forth and try to write it all down. As usual, all of my recipes are listed in detail on our website, theincrediblediscourse.com. Go there and check out everything we've done and everything else we got going on. All right, now we need to prep a few things before we can cook now that we got our shopping list out of the way. First, let's make this salsa verde and get that out of the way so that all the flavors can bloom while we're cleaning the mussels. Remember, this can be made a couple of days in advance if you're in a pinch for time or, time management if you're into that kind of thing. I'm going to start with preheating my oven to 425 degrees. I'm going to add all of the vegetables into a large mixing bowl. The tomatillo, the jalapeno, the garlic, and the onion. I'm also going to add the 1/2 teaspoon of salt and the 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and then I'm going to toss them all in the 3 teaspoons of olive oil. I want to make sure all of the components in the bowl get coated in the oil and seasoning evenly. Once I get there, I'm going to spread these vegetables out on my aluminum-lined and non-stick sprayed sheet pan in a single layer. It's important that it's nonstick because the sugars that release from these vegetables will cause them to stick, and you want every little bit to get into this salsa verde. Now, I want to make sure that it's all in a single layer because too much overlapping will cause inconsistent cooking time. I want everything to cook through and get a little char on the outside. This will add a smokiness to the sauce that will aid in the flavor profile that I'm trying to develop in my broth. Roast this uncovered for about 12 to 15 minutes or until you start to see that little char on the edges of the vegetables. Once I get the color that I'm looking for, I take them out and I let them cool to room temperature. It's important that you allow this to get to room temperature before you blend it. The heat and the motion inside the blender will create a large amount of pressure and could explode from the top, creating possible injury and a definite mess. Be smart. Don't do stupid shit because you're rushing. Once cooled, I'm going to add everything from the sheet pan into the blender along with the cumin and the lime juice, and then I'm going to puree this until it's smooth. You'll notice a pale green, thinnish sauce when it's smooth, and now it's time to make this shit right. We're going to take that whole bunch of cilantro, we're going to rip the stems off where the leaves begin in a twisting motion. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you're going to add the cilantro leaves part into the blender, and you're going to puree everything until it's completely smooth. This takes about 45 seconds to a full minute to do it. And you'll see that this pale green mixture turns into a bright and beautiful green and will also thicken it up a little bit slightly. Add your verde to an airtight container with a tight-fitting lid and refrigerate it until it's time to use it. All right, let's clean some fucking mussels. To start, I'm going to go through my whole batch of mussels and I'm going to discard any that are broken. These are dead and shouldn't be eaten. Now we clean. Using cold running water and the scrub brush or scouring pad, I'm going to scrub the outside of the shells. I don't need loads of pressure, I just need enough to get the sand and all the impurities off the outside of the shell. Also, while I'm doing this, I'm going to need to remove the beards. Beards, you say? Oh yeah, the beards are a clump of fibers that grow from the mussel shell known as byssal threads and are made of chitin. Mussels use these threads to attach themselves to rocks and sea surfaces, and they're not very palatable. Don't eat them. To remove them, I'm going to simply grab that shit and I'm going to basically rip it off and discard it. You're not going to eat it. You're not going to need it. Throw in the garbage. I'm going to do this for each and every one of the mussels for this recipe and make sure that they're nice and clean. Next, we need to purge them. Purging shellfish is an important step in the overall quality of the dish. Purging removes all of the biological contaminants and physical impurities inside the shell like sand and silt. Essentially, by scrubbing the outside and removing the beards and then purging them, I'm cleaning the animal from the inside out so it's ready to eat. To purge them, I'm going to fill my mixing bowl with water, probably about halfway to start. I'm going to add about a half cup of kosher salt and stir to dissolve. I'm trying to emulate the ocean's saltiness, so adjust if you have to. Now I add my mussels to this water and I let them sit completely submerged for about 20 to 30 minutes. If you need to add water so that they're completely under, do so. Remember, these animals are bivalves, and their main function is to filter the ocean water. They'll start to take in this salt water that I made, and they'll spit out the sand and the grit. Once the 20 to 30 minutes have passed, I'm going to rinse them again in cold water, and I'm going to set them aside. In the bottom of the mixing bowl, you may see some sand or grit or shit or whatever at the bottom, and although this is not a direct indication of success, it would mean that the mussels did in fact purge. In my restaurants for years, we actually purged mussels and clams using cornmeal added to our saltwater base. This is not a must, but it definitely is effective. The shellfish feed on the cornmeal and naturally expel sand or debris that they have inside. It's not a must to do it this way, but if you have cornmeal on hand, knock yourself out. All right, the prep is done, and we're ready to make something fucking delicious. In the 6-quart pot on medium heat, I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil and throw in the minced shallot. I'm going to sweat these until they're almost translucent, adjusting my heat if necessary. Then I'm going to add the microplane garlic and give it a stir. Do not burn these components as you will get a bitter taste in the end. Control the heat and cook gently. This should cook rather quickly and become fragrant. Now, I'm going to add the mussels and I'm going to stir them around to get them coated in the oil, the shallot, the garlic, that mixture. At this point, I'm going to add the white wine and I'm going to bring to a simmer so I can burn out the alcohol. This is a very important step and takes about a minute once it's simmering. Now, I'm going to add the chicken stock and then I'm going to bring this to a simmer, again controlling the heat. It should be around medium-high when you add the stock. Cover the pot and simmer for about 5 to 7 minutes, shaking the pan every so often. We're going to start to notice the mussels opening up. Once the majority of them have, I'm going to remove the pot from the heat, and I'm going to take out all of these mussels, and I'm going to remove any of the ones that did not open, and I'm going to throw them in the trash. If they don't open, they're dead and they cannot be eaten. Now, in the base of the pot, I'm going to have the remaining steaming liquid of wine, stock, and now mussel brine. I'm going to put this pot back onto medium heat, and it should rapidly start to simmer again. Here is where I will add the coconut milk and stir to combine well. I'm going to reduce this for about 2 minutes, and then I'm going to add my salsa verde. I don't want to cook this verde for too long and risk changing the color. I want and I need that bright flavor and color. It should start to thicken up very slightly, and now I'm going to add my cold butter, stir, and reduce. This process is called monter au beurre and means to mount with butter. This term is used to describe the process of adding cold butter into a sauce at the end of the cooking process to add richness, flavor, and shine. As this butter is melting, I continue to stir it and it continues to reduce. I'm looking for a certain consistency and viscosity, like a semi-thick soup kinda. When I get there, I remove the sauce from the heat and add the chopped cilantro. Here, it's important to add the cilantro at the very, very end when it has come off the heat. Cooking this herb will make it turn gray and give it an unpleasant presentation. By adding it this way, we provide a nice herbaceous punch. The sauce should be a light green color, very appetizing and very bright. Now I'm going to taste my broths for salt and make sure that it's just right. Now let's plate this shit and eat it. Now we can do this a couple of different ways. If you're at home and making this for you and another, it's probably easy just to add the mussels right back into the pot and coat them, and then pour everything into this pot into a nice large bowl and garnish the whole thing with the cilantro leaves and serve the lime on the side. You can also serve this with a little crusty bread wedge to soak up all that delicious soup underneath. But if you're in a restaurant and you want to kind of up your plating game, I would choose a nice and large open bottom bowl and fan out all the mussels, hinge side down, meat side up, or open side up, however you want to look at it. And then you're going to pour the sauce over the top so that every mussel gets a little bit in every shell. Hit it with the cilantro leaves and place the lime wedges on the rim of the bowl, and then a little bit of the crusty bread on top. A little micro cilantro or micro amaranth for some color and pop. And then you have a very light dash of smoked paprika across the top for some contrast of color. And you're ready to go on an elegantly plated comfort dish that's sure to please. Let me know how this recipe turned out for you. You can always visit theincredible.discourse.com 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Send me some of your pictures and work and let me know how you applied your own twists and creative sides to this dish. Now it's time for food for thought, or what I like to call pro tips from a chef's lips. Now that our bellies are full, it's time to fill our minds, chefs. First, I want to talk to my all walks of life chefs. These are my home and pros. This first topic applies to you both, and that is practice. Practice, practice, practice. This cooking shit isn't something that you just wake up one day and you're a master at. It takes a lot of time, patience, and practice. Practice everything that you learn and do it often. Rust never sleeps. Practice your knife cuts, your sauces, your heat, your cooking times, and the many, many other things to learn and make it count every single time. Don't just do it to do it. Focus on what your objective is during each session and make sure you get there. And if you don't, understand why you didn't and make a note of what to do next time so you know what you're looking for and how to get there. 1% better than yesterday, every day, chefs. Whenever I'm training a new cook in the kitchen, I challenge them in knife skills. I teach them what to do, and I give a demonstration, and then I ask them to duplicate what I just did. Afterwards, we have a conversation and review about the results, and I challenge them to go home and use simple ingredients around their houses to practice. Practice that brunoise on the carrot or a potato. Practice the julienne on an onion or a cabbage. These ingredients are cheap and easily accessible. And what you're getting out of it is a skill that you can apply at home in your cooking for your family or at the restaurant that you're working at for your guests. It's something that you take with you anywhere you go and must be practiced. This applies to all things cooking. Practice your reductions, your cooking techniques, your mother sauces. The dividends will pay out and you truly get what you put into it. Learn all of the ways to do something and practice them all. In this industry and world, the saying, "there is more than one way to skin a cat," is very true. The more you know something in and out, the more it becomes second nature. When it comes time to apply a skill, you'll be more apt in its execution. Once you've mastered a skill, you'll be more versed in how to change it or adapt it and add it to your repertoire, crafting your own version. Practicing also helps with time management and cost efficiency. The more you practice, the faster you will become, which will in turn make you more efficient and will help you reduce your waste and help you plan better. Once you have mastered skills, you have a good grasp of how much time and resources you'll need to complete those tasks. At home, time is of the essence and money isn't always abundant, so mastering these skills can only get food on the table faster and more affordably. In a professional setting, time and resources equal money. The more you waste, the less you make. And unless you're the owner with a fat-ass bank account and no deadlines to make, chances are you're working with someone else's time and cash, putting you at risk with every chance you take of being unprepared and underskilled. Practicing also teaches you how to limit your mistakes and learn what not to do through experience. The more you fuck it up, the more you learn. The trick here, and my professional advice, is not to make the same mistakes twice. Learn the first time. Write it down. Engrave it into your brain so that the next time you cross that road, you know which path to take. Practicing helps you express your creativity and helps you develop your own culinary style. But no two chefs are identical in their style and palate. The more you know and practice, the more you hone these skills and they become a part of your bag. Once you have a bag filled with tricks, you start to know what you like and what you don't, and what works and what doesn't, and then it all starts coming together. Patience, chefs. You weren't born with these skills. You got to nurture them. You got to refine them. This next topic is purely for my professional chefs, young and old. I've been around a little bit now, and I can tell you that an infection that this industry suffers from is professionalism, or lack thereof. And no, this doesn't apply to all of us, but it does to a lot of us. And it could be the difference in getting or keeping a job or not. I've seen this in a lot of really young cooks learning and finding their way, and a lot of old dogs who have lost or are losing sight of what we're really doing here. I'd like to start off by saying that it's not always professional to come into a new setting and tell everyone how you did it in your last job, or that they're doing it incorrectly because you've seen it done differently somewhere else. Usually, the chef will ask you for your ideas when the appropriate time presents itself and doesn't always appreciate the distraction of a cook detouring what they've already taught. Maybe the chef prefers it to be the way everyone else is doing it. I used to work with an older gentleman who liked to change things in the prep or cooking process that I would teach to all of my cooks. He would tell them that he knows more and that this is a more efficient or better way. And what happens in these scenarios is that it creates a breach in protocol where the cooks question the procedure or instructions that the chef is given. The road back to trying to restore order often becomes difficult because a division has been fostered. Keep it professional. Do it the way the chef wants, and if you feel so strongly about your way, pull the chef to the side and ask him. You may be surprised one way or another. The chef may say he's never heard of it that way and say, go for it. Or he may say he has seen it before and prefers the way that he's taught. Either way, the way of the chef will always be a golden rule. Time and attendance is the most annoying part of this whole conversation. If you can't be on time, don't waste mine. Being on time is showing up early and getting yourself prepared mentally and physically. Being at your station on time and ready to work goes an extremely long way. I've worked with guys who are legitimately late on their every shift their first week on the job. And it looks bad and makes everyone think you don't give a shit about the kitchen or your coworkers. Be there, be on time, be a good coworker, and give a shit. And if you have to call out, does it make sense to call out of work at the time you're supposed to arrive? Shit happens. I get it. Shit happens to me. But it doesn't happen every day, and it doesn't happen every week, and in almost every single case, it doesn't happen coincidentally at the exact time I'm supposed to be at work. Calling out irresponsibly shows unreliability. And I'm not saying you can't get sick, or your kids can't either. But what I'm saying is you don't get sick right at 2 p.m. for a 2 p.m. shift. You knew. Communicating time off requests is a huge one. Everyone is entitled to time off, and I encourage it. It helps keep balance and motivation in life. My personal policy is 2 weeks before you want to go. You put in the request early enough, and chances are I grant it. Now, the flip side to this is in many restaurants, they have blackout dates. And I know here in Miami, between October and February, things are hectic and they're busy. It's our season down here, and as a young chef and cook, you have to understand that this is the busiest time in the restaurant and that you're needed. My advice to you, if you need this time off during the season, is to partner with your chef way in advance so that they can work to find a solution way before the time comes. Communication is key in this subject. Knowing when to be heard and when it's time to listen. I touched on this in a previous episode, and if you haven't listened to that one yet, you should go back and do it. Most of the time in kitchens, the chef is the one who talks, and the cooks are the ones who listen and execute. You wouldn't see the co-pilot or the navigator tell the captain of the plane how to operate and drive the plane, right? Because he's the captain. He has the title, the rank, and most likely the knowledge that surpasses everyone else involved in the situation or setting. When it's time for you to be heard, you will be asked. And if you feel like you absolutely need to be heard, pull your chef to the side. Never call out in front of the brigade unless you're looking to be the example of what happens when you do. Chefs don't have loads of patience, and there's too much going on in their chef brains, and time is money, so they need to be able to give orders and count on the brigade to execute and execute correctly. Work clean and neat all the time. Have a clean station, a clean uniform, an apron, and sharp knives. No one will ever tell you that your knife is too sharp or your station and uniform is too clean. Being clean and organized with the right tools calibrated just right means you're prepared for what is to come. When the orders start piling in, you have a workspace that is ready to work with you. I've seen too many cooks pile endless amounts of shit all over their station and then look like chaotic dummies when they have no space to plate or cut. I've also worked next to the guy who asks to borrow your knife every time they have to slice a steak because they either aren't prepared or they didn't bring a knife, or their knives are as dull as a spoon and they're clueless on how to sharpen them. Knives are one of those tools of the trade here. Yes, there are many, but none used as much as your knives, and if you don't have one or you don't know how to sharpen it, you need to figure it out. That's like a doctor performing surgery with no tools or equipment. They wouldn't do a very good job, would they? It's not professional for you to ask to use someone else's knife because you don't have one or a good one to use. And let me tell you, if we work together and you ask to use my knife for the whole service, don't be surprised if you get a nice smiling no and maybe a little trash talk to go with it. Pro tip here, don't take your car to a mechanic with no tools. He's probably a shitty mechanic. Same applies to the kitchen. Call back orders when they're called into you. Even if you don't repeat the entire order called, at least fucking acknowledge the person calling so they know you understood. Nothing is more annoying than calling a ticket in silence and then getting fucked up food when it hits the pass. Those plates get thrown in the garbage and restarted almost every single time. If you're that line cook who is sensitive like most are nowadays, you'll be the one in the walk-in crying and talking that shit that chef don't like you and threw away all your plates and had you remake every single dish during service. Don't be that guy. Acknowledge your chef with a herd or a callback or something. Stop using the goddamn phone during service. Nothing burns my bread like seeing a cook texting or social media surfing during service. I will 100% of the time call you out in front of everyone. It's disrespectful to your craft and everyone else who is focused to do such a careless act. If you need to take a phone call, do it outside of the kitchen and let someone know that you have to take it. And don't take every single one. Emergencies happen. I get it. But you know who you are. I see what you're doing, and so does every single other person doing the job. Stay off the phone. Stay focused. Give a shit. And while we're on the subject of the phone, let's talk about music in the kitchen. Ask your chef before you start playing music. Your chef may not like you playing music or having headphones in. I used to work with someone who had AirPods in their ears all the time, and every single day they got in trouble for it. You can't focus when you have all that noise directly into your ear, and it's annoying when every time you speak to this person they go, huh? Or what? Like, bro, come on. Get in the zone here. And absolutely no music or headphones during service. There must be complete focus and attention on what you're doing. The only noise that should be heard is the chef's voice and the execution of the orders coming in. And if you're a smoker, make sure you communicate with your chef or your sous chef when you're going to go smoke. Don't be the person who disappears and no one knows where you are, especially when the doors open for service. And don't throw the butts on the property. Dispose of them the right way. It's disrespectful of you to litter on the property grounds. It looks bad for you and the restaurant. Always keep the image of the restaurant and yourself in mind with everything that you do while you're on the clock. The professional impression you make could be a very impactful one, whether it's your first day or you've been there a while. Lastly, have some fucking common manners. You'd be surprised what a yes sir or a no ma'am can do. Opening doors for people whose hands are full, saying please and thank you when you need something, not butting in and waiting your turn and saying excuse me. I mean, shit, I'm hoping everyone who is listening here has had some kind of parenting and has been exposed to common manners. It gives a great impression. It shows professionalism and creates an inviting image that makes people gravitate to you. It also shows you have a good attitude, and attitude is the one thing and one thing only you can control every single time. Your chef will be more willing to work with a less skilled chef with a great attitude than a more seasoned chef with a horrible one, and that's a fact. I know this topic was lengthy, and I could probably do an entire episode on just professionalism in the kitchen. I don't think it's something that is emphasized enough nowadays. I feel like efficiency and focus would go up incredibly if there was just a little more professionalism practiced. And there you go, guys. Another thing to practice along with all the other skills you're trying to develop. Develop your fucking professionalism and focus on it. You'll be amazed at where it will take you. Maybe I'll do an episode on just this topic. I feel it could be necessary. Anyhow, that's enough of my ranting for today. I hope you enjoy the mussels recipe and my advice on practicing and professionalism. The advice comes from a good place, an experienced place, and it will help you succeed in the industry and at home. Now go make the mussels and visit theincrediblediscourse.com. Keep growing, keep learning, keep eating. And if you like what you heard today, leave me 5 stars on Spotify or a great review wherever you're listening to this, and make sure you visit us at theincrediblediscourse.com and all of our socials when they come up. I appreciate your time as always. I'm Mark Grigsby, and you've just been put through The Incredible Discourse. Till next time, play my theme music.